Okay, thank you for the introduction. I want to say that I was brought to Indian physics by Subir Sachdev, who was my advisor when I was postdoc at Yale, and then I met at that occasion Satya Majumdar. Okay, so I want to thank the program organizer of the Large Deviation, although this will not be a talk about large deviation, and also the Institute, which I find absolutely a marvelous place. Bernard Derrida told me he had a fantastic time here, so now I understand why. It's a great place to work. Okay, so I will talk about my recent work on memory in Kardar-Parisi-Zhang type growth, and how you can get exact results using better ansatz, and in fact go even to experiments by doing some predictions and testing them. There will be some part of the talk which will be a bit technical, and I will try to go a bit far on them and to give the main ideas, but you have to ask questions if there's anything you don't understand. Okay, so it's well known now that if you have growth process in a plane with stochastic rules, local stochastic rules, then you expect one-dimensional KPZ universality class, and the excitement in physics and mathematics has been for this 1D KPZ class comes from the fact that it has shown some integrability structure, integrability properties, and also universality at large time and large scale, which is related, appears to be related to random matrix theory. And this was shown in discrete models, solvable models, discrete solvable models in a KPZ class. And everywhere appears in these models the Tracy-Widom distributions, which are the distributions, as you know, of largest eigenvalues of Gaussian random matrix, for instance, GUE or GOE ensembles. But at the level of one-time quantities, and I will explain what that means, there is even a deeper structure, determinantal structure emerging at large time in terms of air process. I will define these things later. Okay, so our work has been to study directly the continuum problem, which is a continuum KPZ equation, as it was formulated by Kardar-Parisi-Zhang in '86, which is equivalent to a continuum-directed polymer problem, and show that it's possible to calculate one-time height distribution for some initial conditions, but for all times, and to check explicitly the convergence to the Tracy-Widom distributions. And this was done using methods which combine better ansatz, so integrable systems, and disordered system method, which are replica method. So it's called the replica Bethe-Ansatz method. Now it's a physics method, and of course mathematicians, okay, they like the heuristic side of it, but they need something more rigorous. And in mathematics, there's been a lot of work recently to develop rigorous methods, in fact, rigorous replica methods. And some, almost a large fraction of the results obtained by this method have been actually proved by mathematicians. So since I will spend a little bit of time on the one-time distributions, I must mention my earlier collaborators who are listed here. And I have more recent work on large deviations in KPZ with Satya and Gregory Scher and David Dean, and also with my student Alexandre Krajenbrink, and in particular connections to fermions. So if I have time, I will tell you connection at the total end, but I'm not sure I will have time. Okay, so I will focus on the question of multi-time observables in KPZ model, which is multi-time correlation functions, which is still very open question. So we made some partial progress with Jacopo De Nardis, and this is his paper. And it was only the tail of the distribution, but it was good enough to actually be compared with experiments, which is this paper. And I did something a bit more recently on this thing, which I will also describe. Okay, so these are my collaborators, Pasquale Calabrese, with whom I started this thing on KPZ, who is in Sisa in Italy, Alberto Rosso, who did fantastic numerics to help considerably our understanding of the problem. Thomas Guedret was a student, Martin, who was postdoc, Timothée Thierry, who was a student and now is a postdoc at University of Leuven, Alexandre Krajenbrink, who is my student in Paris now, Andrea De Luca and Jacopo De Nardis were both, or are still both postdocs in École Normale. I don't need to introduce Satya and Gregory Scher, David Dean, and I had the pleasure to collaborate with Kazamusa Takeuchi, who is a fantastic experimentalist. Well, he does fantastic experiments and he also does some theory. Okay, so why is the problem interesting? From the point of view of mathematics, there is a question whether the multi-time structure, the multi-time correlation in KPZ also exhibit determinantal structure or not. So what kind of mathematical structure lies behind the multi-time observables? This is still very open. There's been a paper, well, there's been a talk actually in this summer by Baek and Liu in July, and they just put the paper 2 days ago on arXiv. So they obtained a solution of TASEP, an explicit formula for multi-time correlation, which is quite complicated, but seems to exhibit determinantal structure. They haven't yet taken the KPZ limit of it, so we don't know if it will survive to the continuum limit. For a physics point of view, this question of multi-time correlation is interesting in terms of memory. Is there a memory effect in the evolution in a growth process, in a stochastic growth process? And this can be measured by this ratio, which is a ratio, the two-time covariance ratio, which is a, so you start your interface, I will define this more properly, of course, later, but you start your interface at time 0 in some initial condition, and you observe it at two later times, T1 and T2, and you ask how are these correlated. This is a dimensionless number between 0 and 1 by construction. And in the large time limit, it turns out it's a non-equilibrium problem. So it turns out it doesn't depend only on the time difference, but it depends on the ratio of the time. It's like in the aging or coarsening problem. So it goes to a function of this ratio. And the question is whether when the time separation becomes very large, this goes to a constant or finite constant or to 0. So if it goes to a positive constant, it means there is persistent correlation. So it means that there is memory of fluctuation of earlier time, even at infinite times. And in experiments, this is actually what is suggested by the data. So I'm not going to comment this in detail, but you can see here on the scale, it goes from 0.6 to 1, that these curves actually do not seem to go to 0, certainly. Okay, so it seems that there is a persistent memory effect, and there is a dual picture of KPZ growth in terms of directed paths in random potential, which I will explain. And in terms of this picture, it is, one can rephrase the question of persistent correlation. Well, the persistent correlation come actually from the fact that optimal paths, for instance here, two optimal paths from 0 to 0 or from 0 to 0 at later time, so shorter path and longer path in the same random potential, these optimal paths have a tendency to coalesce, to share the same, even if this edge here goes to infinity, there will be still a finite fraction here of common path. Okay, this will become more clear later, I hope, but this is another way to see this property. Questions at this stage? Yeah, okay. Yeah, this question I was already asked in the Tata Institute. It's probably delta to the minus 1/3. This is what we, so it's probably a minus 1/3 exponent. But the analysis is not easy because you have to have both times large, okay? So that's why there are several curves here. As a function of the earlier time, you see that the data which is available is, when the earlier time is large, is becoming very limited, right? So you have to kind of guess a little bit the result. But now we know how to calculate this, so this is the main question of the talk. Can we calculate this number? Is it universal? And so on. Okay? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to calculate this constant. I'm going to show how you can actually calculate it, predict it, and I'm going to show that it's universal. Okay, so in the first part of the talk, I'll give a short review on KPZ equation, KPZ class, random matrices, Tracy-Widom distributions. Everybody maybe is not familiar to this here. So then I will briefly show, and that will be a little bit technical, but how you solve KPZ by mapping to directed paths, to quantum mechanics of attractive Bose gas, and obtain a large time Tracy-Widom distribution. And I will do it for this droplet initial condition, which leads to the GUE random matrix ensemble. But it has been done, the same calculation have been done for all flat initial condition and stationary Brownian initial condition. I'll briefly mention them. Okay, so the second part will be 2-time KPZ, which is a problem to calculate the joint probability distribution of the height at 2 different times. And we will first use a direct approach, which is valid for arbitrary ratio of time, but gives only the tail, the exact tail. I mean, we believe exact tail of the distribution when one of the argument of this, it's a function of 2 variables. And when one of the variables is large, we get an exact result. It turns out that actually the prediction from that agree with experiments even in a much broader range of age. So it's very useful actually for the experiments. So it's a theory which is valid beyond its domain of validity, if you want. Okay, and then I will give some second calculation which reaches directly the limit of infinite time separation, and in particular predict this universal constant. Okay, so let me just some elementary things about surface growth. The simplest situation in 1 dimension, so x is a 1-dimensional variable, and height, h of xt is just the height of the interface at time t. And these are descriptions where one neglects overhangs, which of course occur in experiments, but the idea is that at large scales they are not important. So the first equation, the simplest equation for this growth process is the Edward-Wilkinson equation, which is this equation where you have growth because of some noise. So the noise can come from random deposition of objects on the surface, which makes it grow. Or it can go, okay, it has to have temperature fluctuation, it can have many different origin. Surface tension, which wants to make the interface flat. So on average, the interface will be flat, but it will have some fluctuations. Okay, and the noise in the models turn out that in that case, one can choose them as delta function correlated. Although this is a very subtle point, but not for this model. This model is very simple. It's Gaussian. It's completely linear equation. As you can see, you can solve it by Fourier transform. And then you see that the height grows like time to the 1/4. So these are the height fluctuations, and they grow like time to the 1/4, and you have simple diffusive dynamics. Everything is very simple. This model is very simple. But Kardar, Parisi, Zhang in '86 noticed that, in fact, this model cannot really hold if the growth occurs normal to the interface. Okay, so if the growth is normal to the interface, like in this drawing, along the normal, so if the interface is tilted, the growth will be normal to the interface. Then if you project this velocity of growth on a vertical direction, which is what we do when we write this equation, then you have an additional cosine theta angle, which has this form, and if you expand in gradients, you get this KPZ equation. Okay, and of course, it's only an expansion in gradient, but higher order gradients are irrelevant. It's a long story, but essentially this is the main KPZ equation. Okay, so in 1 dimension, the scaling exponent for the fluctuations have been known for a long time. I'm not going to go into the story. It's known that the height fluctuation grow like time to the 1/3, and that the diffusion is super diffusive. I mean, it's a super diffusive relation between x and t. And now these exponents actually are rigorous, okay? So they are really proved by mathematicians. So the focus now is more about the probability distribution, the entire probability distribution of the entire field. So we will be a bit more modest, and we will look at the height field at one point, but there is results for entire distribution, multi-point distributions. Okay, so it's non-Gaussian, and the interesting fact is that it's a non-equilibrium problem, and even at large time, this probability distribution depends on some features of the initial condition, not short-scale detail, but some broad features. For instance, it's different for a flat initial condition, which is this one, or a wedge initial condition. So wedge initial condition is this initial condition. This is H and this is X. So the black one here. And what happens is that at short time, this wedge will be rounded. When the interface grows, eventually it will grow into some curved interface. So it's also called curved geometry, wedge geometry, or droplet geometry. It's all the same thing actually at large time. Now this, and then there is also a initial condition. H is a Brownian motion in X. And it can be shown that this Brownian motion, if you start your interface with this distribution of height, it remains Brownian motion at all time. Well, for a given coefficient, not for arbitrary coefficient, but for a given coefficient, which here is 1. And but there is a average level which actually has a non-trivial distribution, and this is called the Bike-Raynes distribution, which I will mention briefly. So these different initial conditions lead to different are related to different random matrix ensembles. And just one thing is that if you look at, for instance, flat initial condition, you look at short time. In the short time regime, one can actually neglect the nonlinearity, and one actually recovers essentially Edouard-Wilkinson growth. So you can say, and mathematicians like to say, that this equation is a crossover between Edouard-Wilkinson fixed point at short time and the KPZ fixed point at infinite time. Questions? Okay, so of course the exciting thing about this field is that there are very beautiful experiments in particular by Takeuchi and Sano, on two-dimensional geometry. So it's liquid crystals which are in a turbulent state. There are some electric fields. And there are actually two phases. They exist in two phases which have different content of topological defects. And what happens is that there is one phase which is stable and one phase which is unstable. You shine a laser at this point here. You generate a stable phase which grows into the unstable phase in the form of a droplet. And you can measure the height fluctuation. So these are the time, these colors are the time coding. But you can also shine, I mean, the beauty of the experiment, you can also shine, you can essentially create any initial condition. You can shine also the laser along a line, and then you create a flat geometry. Okay, so in all of this experiment, the height at a given point will grow like linear function of time, plus some fluctuation, time to the 1/3, where chi is a random variable which you are interested in. So these exponents have been also seen in many, well, quite a number of systems now. This system is the only one which allows to have a lot of statistics because the experiment is very fast. And also there is no effect of quench disorder at all, no spurious effects because it's turbulent, okay, so there is no possibility of quench disorder. Okay. So let me switch to something slightly different now, which are apparently unrelated, which are random matrices. And we've had talks about it last few days, so I'm going to go very fast. As you know, there is, if you take large n by n Gaussian independent entries, depending on whether you take Hermitian matrix, real symmetric or symplectic matrix, you have this Dyson index beta. But they all share, the eigenvalue of these matrices all share the same semicircle distribution, which is extremely stable, as was shown in the talk the other day. And the focus now is about the largest eigenvalue, so the edge of the spectrum. And this problem was addressed by Tracy-Widom in '94. And they found that the maximum eigenvalue, okay, I'm scaling the matrix in some way, grows, the fluctuation of it grows like n to the 1/3. And this 1/3 exponent is exactly the KPZ exponent. It's not obvious a priori, but it turns out that it's the same universality class, essentially. And the distribution itself, I'm going to need explicit form, so I'm going to show you. The cumulative distribution can be written as a Freedom determinant. So Freedom determinant just means the determinant of some kernel, some operator which acts on functions on a real axis. And for instance, for the GOE ensemble, the kernel is the so-called Airy kernel. And the GOE ensemble also can be expressed in terms of Airy functions. Okay, so let me just briefly say what's the Freedom determinant. So you have a kernel kxy, which can be, for instance, this function, k of AB, I wrote it here. Okay, so I call k of xy, and then these are Heaviside theta functions, so I'm just restricting this kernel on some interval. Here I choose 0 to infinity, I can choose some other interval, but so this k, I'm using the same letter, it's not very nice, but this actually is a restriction of this kernel on an interval. And then I write the determinant, as you know, exponential of trace log. So you can expand in traces, and this arrives to this formula, which is somehow, which is one definition of a Freedom determinant as some series. Okay? You can also, of course, write it as a product of eigenvalues, but it's not always very useful. So this is the form that I will use later. Now, it looks complicated, but in fact, with the Mathematica code, you can very easily, it was shown by Bornemann in 2009 that there is exponential convergence if your kernel is not completely crazy. And in a few lines, you can actually plot the Tracy-Widom distribution very easily with this by projecting on a finite dimensional space, this determinant. Okay, now these guys who invented this function actually plotted already a long time ago this Tracy-Widom distribution. Okay, so now let me, some question about Tracy-Widom distributions. Okay, so now let me go to the, yeah, it's an infinite dimensional matrix, and if you truncate to finite dimension using Gauss-Legendre kind of rules, then you have already extremely good approximations. Okay, so what are the exact results we obtained on discrete models? So they were obtained quite early on in the year around 2000. The first model was a polynuclear growth model, which is a model where you have objects like here randomly falling on a surface, and they stick to the surface when they reach the surface, and then they grow laterally. And when the terraces meet, then they merge. So the rules are relatively simple, and it turns out that this model is determinantal. I mean, can be written, transition probability can be written as determinants. So, I mean, it's not that easy, but with some asymptotic analysis, you can show, it was shown by these people, that if you start from droplet initial condition, you end up with a GOE fluctuation for the height, GOE Tracy-Widom, and flat initial condition, GOE Tracy-Widom. So these were the earlier works. Similar results were obtained in the totally asymmetric exclusion process, which is a model of particle on a line. So this particle can jump to the right only at some rate, but they can jump only if the site is not occupied. And there is a dual representation of this model in terms of a surface. So if there is a particle, the surface goes down. If there is no particle, the surface goes up. So to each particle configuration, there is an interface configuration, bijection. And the growth process of the interface is equivalent to just filling in this minima. So it's like having these objects falling randomly into the minima. So it's really a growth process. You can see it as a growth process, and then if you start from some older particle on the left, which is this initial condition, it will relax to some profile with some fluctuation which were shown to be with a 1/3 exponent by Johansson. Okay, now there's been much progress since then, and the full multi-space point correlation now is known in terms of every process for various initial conditions. And for instance, if you start with this droplet initial condition, which is, for instance, this wedge initial condition, at large time, you rescale it properly, you center it. Then in the rescale variable, in the rescale space variable, which is x divided by t to the 2/3, x hat, I call it x hat, then this becomes the Airy process minus a parabola. So the Airy process is a stationary reflection symmetric process, which is, okay, it can be defined in various ways, but one way is to consider the Dyson-Brownian motion. So the Dyson-Brownian motion is, again, you take a large Gaussian random matrix, but now each element performs independent Brownian motion, and you ask what are the eigenvalues. The largest eigenvalue is, by definition, the Airy 2 process. Now, there is in addition this parabola, because for droplet initial condition, as I said, there was a curved geometry. So even at infinite time, there is a memory of this curved geometry. So there is this parabola. So this is a result which is now proved, essentially, starting even from TASEP. And this process is very, very well characterized because the M space point cumulative distribution can be written as a larger matrix freedom determinant with an extended Airy kernel. Questions? Okay, and the beauty again of all of this is that it's not just mathematics, but you can really see it in experiments. And Takeuchi and Sano measured the probability distribution for these two initial conditions. They found GOE and GOE, as measured here by the kurtosis and the skewness. And even more impressively, I find, because here in this plot there is absolutely no fitting parameters. All the parameters have been determined from these first observables. And you can see the convergence to the Airy 1 process. So this is a correlation function. It's a function of rescale space. 2-point correlation function as a function for different times. So this is for flat, Airy 1, and circular, Airy 2. So the convergence for Airy 2 is a bit slower, but you can see on the red here is a much larger time, and the dot is actually the exact prediction. So this is very nice. And it shows the universality of the thing, because the experiment doesn't know anything about the KPZ equation, right? Okay, so let me start with the part 1 of the talk. So I'll try to go a bit fast, so I want to get to the part 2. So the part 1 is just a one-time height distribution, and to get them, we're going to follow some path. So we'll start from KPZ equation. We'll show that it can be formally solved in terms of continuum paths in a random potential, which is a Kolopf mapping. Now, this is now a disordered, StatMech disordered problem, and it can be studied using replica. And one arrives at actually a formulation in terms of the quantum mechanics of bosons. And the model which one arrives, it is a delta Bose gas, which has been solved a long time ago by Bethe and Zatz, so one has a lot of tools. This route was initiated by Mehran Kardar in '87 and has been expanded a lot since. And eventually one obtains from this the one-time height distribution, which I will briefly sketch. Okay, so these results were obtained by us and then by Viktor Dodsenko. At the same time, convergence of Tracy-Widom was obtained also by Sasamoto, Spohn, and by these mathematicians from a different route, not from replica Bethe and Zatz. Then we have a solution for flat initial condition, and mathematicians established a solution for discretized version when there's still not result for convergence in a continuum. And for stationary KPZ, it was obtained by Imamura and Sasamoto using this replica Bethanzats, and a little bit after that, using very powerful machinery of mathematics, which is a McDonald process, the mathematician obtained a rigorous derivation of these results. Okay, so the Koloff mapping is very simple mapping. It's just you start from KPZ equation, and you look at the exponential of the height of the KPZ field. Exponential of h. You define this, and it's called the partition function z. Now, this partition function satisfies this equation, just change of variable. But now, the noise, instead of being additive, is multiplicative. Okay, so it's called a stochastic heat equation. And it turns out that it describes directed paths in a random potential. You can see that because if you define the partition function in a statistical mechanics sense, of all paths going from point y at time 0 to point x at time t in this form, so it's a path integral. It has this Brownian kind of term here, and it has a random potential. So this object, so again, it's a sum of all paths going from y to x in time t in a random potential v of xt. This object is well known from Feynman-Catch formula to satisfy this equation and with this initial condition. Okay? Questions? Okay? Clear? Okay, so it's totally equivalent to write the KPZ equation and to write this stochastic heat equation, which describes the paths in a random potential. Completely equivalent. The equivalence can be written like this. If you give me the initial condition for KPZ here, I take the exponential, then I multiply by this partition function of paths going from y to x, integrate over y, and I get the solution for KPZ equation at time t. Now, of course, you don't know what this partition sum is, right? So it's still a formal solution, but it will be very helpful. So this formula allows to identify for various initial conditions of KPZ what is the geometry of the path. So for instance, if you have a droplet initial condition in KPZ, something like this for the height field, you see that this thing will be very localized in space. So it means that it's a point-to-point directed polymers. So the polymers, these paths are also called directed polymers. They are directed paths in the xt plane. And they go from point to point, and this from fixed point to a fixed point. And this corresponds to droplet initial condition. Now you see that if you start with a flat initial condition in KPZ, then this is just 1. So you have to integrate over all possible y. So it's a point to line initial condition. So you look at all the paths which go from a given point to any point on this line. So the initial condition in KPZ is translated in slightly different formulation of the directed polymer problem. Okay? So what is the strategy? Strategy is to calculate the integer moments of the partition sum. It turns out that it's possible to do it. Now, once one has the integer moments, it's a game to guess the probability distribution from them. It's a guess. For the continuum KPZ equation, it's really a guess, because these moments are growing too fast to uniquely determine the distribution. But the guess turned out to be, the physicist's guess turns out to be correct. And the mathematicians, of course, do the same game, actually, but for discrete models, where the moment problem is well defined, and then they take the limit to the continuum. And they say they have proved the thing. Okay, so how do you calculate these moments? Well, let me write down the most general product of partition sums with arbitrary endpoint, average over the noise, the KPZ noise, or the random potential if you want. You can show that this object satisfies an evolution equation with an operator here, which can be written like this. So it's like a imaginary time Schrödinger equation, if you want, with a Hamiltonian, which has a kinetic term, which is nothing but the diffusion term, which was in this path integral before. Okay. So this diffusion term gives rise to this term. So the average is over this, so let me be more precise. The average is over this noise eta, but eta and V are exactly the same thing, right? So it's also the average over the random potential. Okay, so now, so this is called the replica method because you have several copies here of the partition sum, right? Several replica of the partition sum. So this Hamiltonian has this form, and then there is this term, which is an interaction term. It's a delta interaction, yeah? Sorry? Okay, so it's a generalization. So what I want is something, this is what not very specific what Z means here, right? But I'm going to be more specific, and this Z will have different points and so on. So this is just schematic, okay? I will show you more precisely. So, but to be able to do something, I have to completely generalize it to arbitrary endpoints. So the endpoints here, x1, xn, are arbitrary. And I will write an equation of evolution which involves these endpoints. It's the only thing I can do, actually. Okay, and this is the evolution equation. You can show this relatively easily from the path integral itself. I'm not going to go into the detail. It's a simple calculation. Now, the delta function here is because I've supposed that I have delta correlated noise. If I had some structure in my correlator of the noise, I'd have another function here, which would be the correlator of the noise. And the fact that there is a minus sign, which means attraction between the particles. So you can see this as particles, n particles for the nth moment. The attraction is because it's always an attraction in disordered system. You always end up with attraction between replica because basically the paths of two different of this partition sum, they want to share this, they see the same random potential. So they want to share the best position in the random potential, so they will attract. Effectively, that leads to an attraction, which is mediated by the random potential. Okay, so anyway, this is a completely mathematical statement. So it means that, in terms of quantum mechanics, you can rewrite this average as a matrix element of the evolution operator of this Schrödinger Hamiltonian for n particle between initial state and final state. So it's a very useful description. And it turns out that this model was solved by Lieblinegger in '63. Okay, so what do we need to know about the solution of Lieblinegger to calculate this moment? So let me be more specific and look at this fixed endpoint polymer partition sum, which corresponds to KPZ with droplet initial condition, which is what I told you before. So I want to calculate this moment. So I can rewrite it, this is just what I said here. I can rewrite it like this, but now all the points are identified, okay? They're all the same. So clearly this is a symmetric state. So all particles at the same point, so it means they are actually boson. Well, it means that, it's a symmetric state, so I can just restrict myself in this calculation to symmetric states. So I can just decompose my Hamiltonian, my evolution operator in terms of eigenstates and eigenenergy like this. And this is essentially, it's a bosonic problem because it's only symmetric states. And I can rewrite this using this, I can rewrite like this. And you see what I need. I need the eigenfunction at the initial point. I need the norm of the eigenstates. So these are not normalized, I need the norm. I need these eigenenergies, and I need to perform the summation over the eigenstate, which is probably the most difficult thing. Okay, so this is what I need. And the Lieblinegger solution gives me everything. So I can start working on it. So first of all, the eigenstates. So if you put your Hamiltonian on a ring, it is known that since better on that the solution, the eigenfunction, are actually indexed by a set of rapidities, lambda 1, lambda n. So the rapidities are kind of a generalization of momenta for free particles. They are complex numbers. So each eigenfunction is indexed by a set of rapidity. What do I do then? I take just simply plane wave with these rapidities, and I symmetrize, because it's a symmetric eigenstate, so this is the sum of a permutation. And the only signature of the interaction here is this amplitude, which is a crossing amplitude, which is telling me that because of the delta function, I mean, if you have solved this Schrödinger problem with the delta function, you know that there is a discontinuity in the derivative. And this, okay, two particles, it's a trivial thing. But it turns out, and this is the Bethe-Ansatz property, the integrability property, that it's true for arbitrary number of particles. Okay, so there is an explicit form like this for arbitrary eigenstates. And the question now is, of course, how do you get the rapidities? They have to satisfy some periodic boundary condition on a ring. Turns out, actually, that mathematicians prefer to work directly in infinite space, but physicists like to work on a ring. So these are called the Bethe equation. I won't get into details. Here, the solution of this Bethe equation is not very surprising, since we have bosons with attraction, that they will form bound states. So it means that these rapidities will have imaginary parts. And the ground state is a very simple expression, it's just this. And it was studied extensively by Mehran Kardar. Its binding energy grows like minus the number of particles cube. And this is telling you, actually, that the partition sum to the n average, the nth moment, at large time is dominated by the ground state. Okay, if you assume this, then it grows like this. And you see here that first of all, you see that the exponent 1/3 somehow already kind of shows up. But you also see that these moments are growing too fast, because they are growing like exponential n cube. And exponential n cube is too fast to uniquely determine the distribution. So questions in the early days have been, can this expression be continued analytically in n? And answer by Derrida-Brunet was that it cannot be. And to do analytic continuation in n to get the distribution, you have to do, Derrida and Brunet put the problem on a cylinder of fixed radius, and then they could do analytic continuation. But it's not what we want to do. We want to do a fixed time, infinite space problem. Now, this early, very nice, actually, simple early result by Kardar actually contains already information about the large deviation tail. So this actually contains this information about the tail of the distribution of H, which is indeed the Tracy-Widom, the tail of the Tracy-Widom distribution. We studied this with Satya and Gregory. Questions? Okay, so now I'm going to go to the full solution of the problem, which is to sum over all the eigenstates. Okay, so the eigenstates, it's possible to sum over them because they have a simple structure. The structure is as follows. You take all the possible partition of n particles into a certain number of bound states, which I call ns. So here I have 3 bound states, if you want. Well, this is a single particle, but formally you can think of it as a bound state if you want. So there are 3 groups. So you have to write n as a sum of partitions like this. And all possible, this will give you all possible eigenstates. So the rapidity of each eigenstate which have this form, it will be equally spaced in imaginary axis. And it has an average, so it has some imaginary part, but it has also a real part, which is the effective momentum of the center of mass of the bound state. And the total eigenenergy is just the sum of the kinetic energy of these bound states, which each contain mj particle and have momentum kj, and the binding energy of each bound state. So structure is very simple. So you can then use results from the Bethe ansatz to express explicitly the moment. So this is a formula. I will only sketch it very briefly. It's a sum over all possible ways to make bound states, all possible partitions of n into this thing. So there is this constraint. And then you have to sum over all these mi's, mj's. Here in this exponential, you see the expression for the energy. And this is the inverse norm, which was calculated by Calabrese and co. So it's a complicated expression, but it's just a bunch of integrals. You can calculate them explicitly for n equal 2, 3, 4, compare with numerics, and so on and so on. But the question is, how from this formula can you get to the distribution of probability of z itself? Okay, so the way to do it, when you have constraint, as you know, yeah? Sorry? Yeah, this is summing of all the bound states.
Only bound states?
No, all states, but all the states are bound states. It's been shown that it's a complete set. Okay, so so you have a constraint here, and to lift this type of constraint, as you know, you can go to some kind of grand canonical ensemble, where you sum over the number of particles, and there's this factorial n here. To get rid of it, you will define this partition sum. Okay, so this is what we call the generating function. X here is not space, it's just some dummy variable x for the generating function. Sorry for the notation, lambda is time to the 1/3. And the free energy F is just minus h. And since there is time to the 1/3 here, it means F is over the 1. Okay, so we expect some fixed distribution over the 1. This is kind of the scaled height, or minus scale height. Okay, so this generating function can be written like this, and it has the property that if you know to calculate it for arbitrary time, arbitrary lambda, then if you take lambda to infinity, time to infinity, it becomes just a cumulative distribution, because this double exponential becomes just simply a theta, Heaviside theta function. Okay, so so I'll show you briefly this generating function. So you reorganize now the sum over the number of strings. You can lift the constraint has been lifted. You can freely sum over all this number of particles in each bound state. But you have two nasty things. You have first that's exponential cubic growth here, because the growth, the energy of the bound state is cubic in M. But there's a very nice trick which I recommend to you if you have this problem one day. It's called the Airy trick, which is essentially the same, well, the generalization of Nubar-Stratanovich trick for quadratic forms. So the Airy trick transforms something cubic into something linear in exponential. Exponential cubic in exponential linear. Okay, so that allows then to get convergent series instead of completely divergent series. And now this ugly factor turns out to be exactly a determinant. And you can use auxiliary variable to get rid of this denominator here. To make a long story short, you introduce auxiliary variables. So I'm not going to go in more details, but you can believe me now that this thing, since there are determinants here, you can reorganize all this stuff into a determinant. So this partition sum here will become itself a determinant. And the kernel which appears contains, of course, the Airy function because of this Airy trick. It contains this factor which looks like a Fermi factor, and actually is a Fermi factor, as we have shown with Satya and Gregory and David Dean. But anyway, so it comes from the summation over this geometric series. And you can remember that this is exactly the definition of the Fredholm determinant. So this shows that this generating function is exactly a Fredholm determinant with this kernel. Okay, so now this is a solution for arbitrary time. You can take time to infinity, which means that lambda goes to infinity. This becomes Heaviside theta function. And some well-known or not so well-known identity of every function give you that this actually becomes, at large time, exactly the Airy kernel. This is a projection of interval S to infinity. So this is exactly the Tracy-Widom distribution. Okay, so this is how the Tracy-Widom distribution emerges from this quantum mechanics and from this replica and from this KPZ. Yeah? Gx is a generating function. So it's some kind of, it's a Laplace, actually it's a Laplace transform of the probability distribution of Z. Okay, so I'm going to go to second part of the talk in 4 minutes left. Okay, so this is really... sorry? You give me how much more? You give me 10 more minutes? Wow, thank you. Okay, I will not abuse it. Okay, so I'll go a bit fast. So we have shown that the height for a droplet initial condition grows like this with fluctuation at a given point, which are Tracy-Widom distribution, which has this form with this Airy kernel. Okay, so before I start the second part, let me just make a small remark on the tail of this Tracy-Widom distribution. So the Tracy-Widom distribution, you can see here that there are Airy functions. Airy functions, they decay extremely rapidly, stretch exponential at large argument. So the tail of this distribution should show something like this. And in fact, if you expand this determinant, you can see that the tail of Tracy-Widom decays like exponentials argument to the 3/2, minus argument to the 3/2, okay? But there's actually a much better approximation of the tail of the Tracy-Widom distribution, which is to expand this determinant in powers of trace. So if you, I mean, I showed you originally that you can expand in powers of trace, in trace of powers and powers of trace. And the first order term is just this one. So it's written like this. And if you plot it, it turns out that it fits really extremely well the Tracy-Widom distribution, almost. So the average of Tracy-Widom is minus 1.7 around here. So almost up to its average, it's almost a perfect fit. So that's really nice. And it's interesting because this approximation actually corresponds to keeping only the contribution where you have all the particles in one string, in one bound state. So the ground state, if you want. So in other words, in the quantum mechanics, if I keep only the ground state, I get already this good approximation up to here. So all the right part of the distribution is very well approximated. Corrections come from higher, when you separate particle in a higher number of bound states. And they give powers of Airy kernel to higher powers, so more Airy functions, so it's higher, since it's exponential, stretch exponential, it decays much faster. Okay, so we're going to assume that this property holds for more complicated observables. It's not at all obvious, but this is the assumption we did with Jacopo De Nardis, and we are going to look at, because this is the only way we could do the calculation, and we were going to get like this a partial tail. So let me remind you quickly the two-time problem. Two-time problem is you want to have the, so KPZ equation droplet initial condition, which is equivalent to two directed polymers with fixed endpoints. And you want to have the joint distribution of these two quantities. Okay, and again, we are interested in a limit where both time go to infinity, but the ratio is fixed. So it's this kind of drawing. You have a short polymer, a long polymer. They will all go from 0 to 0. And delta is the ratio of these two time difference. Okay, so if you rescale the heights in a proper way with T1 to the 1/3 for the first height and the height difference here with T2 minus T1 to the 1/3, you can ask what is the distribution of probability of these rescale heights. So the height at earlier time and the height difference. Okay, so this is a problem which people have working on in KPZ, and there has been a few works. So those who started the thing with very impressive work, but I think there are many terms missing in his approach. Kurt Johansson did an incredible calculation starting from a discrete model, arrive to a formula which is extraordinarily complicated. I mean, it's just no way you can even plot it or say anything about it. It's extremely complicated, but it's rigorous and so on. So we hope that there is a simpler way. Okay, so I have now 10 more minutes. Okay. Okay, so now Patrick Ferrari and Herbert Spohn obtained some partial results for stationary case, and as I mentioned, there is now extremely recent paper by Baik and Liu. Okay, so what we obtained, let me show our result. We obtained the tail of this distribution. Again, it's a distribution of the height at time t1, scale height time t1, and scale height difference. We don't obtain the exact expression. Sigma 1 is supposed to be large. So we obtain the approximation when sigma 1 is large, but sigma is arbitrary. And it has form. And the nice thing is that it's not complicated. I mean, by the standards of this field, it's a not too complicated expression. So it's some derivative operator acting on some cumulative distribution, which has this form in terms of traces, and this is a new kernel which appears, which mixes four array functions. And you can see that in this kernel there is the time ratio, the ratio of times which appears explicitly. Okay, so this is easy to plot, this is easy to compare with experiments, and this is easy to study the asymptotics. At very separated times, it goes to a product of two GOE distributions. So if the times are very separated, these two heights become uncorrelated up to, of course, corrections. And they are both GOE. At close times, however, and that's interesting, this formula gives you the Baik range distribution, which is this guy here, which I'm not going to give explicitly. So it means that it's, again, the height at time t1 and the height difference become uncorrelated, and the height difference at short time becomes the stationary distribution. It's not too surprising. I mean, it's physically makes sense. Okay, so we can study the crossover. I'm not going to get into this. An exciting thing is that when we went to see Takeuchi, and he fitted here, there are the moments of the scale height. Okay, so you measure the interface at two different times. You look at the time difference, the height difference at two different times, scaled by T1. This is a random variable. You look at the moments of this height difference conditioned on the value of the height at the earlier time. And we have a prediction for that from our formula. And this is a prediction. There is no parameter. It's totally parameter free. And these are of course, you need to reach high time. So this is converging to this curve, okay? So the convergence here is pretty clear also, and this is the variance. This is the mean, this is the variance. And the theory is valid beyond its domain of validity because in principle, it should be valid only for large positive sigma 1. But as you can see, it's valid even when sigma 1 C is -1. Questions? Okay, so I'm not going to tell you how we do the calculation, just to mention that the only way we could, so in this calculation is joint moments. You need to introduce two sets of beta states. You need to introduce here what's called form factors. Form factors are complicated things, complicated expressions, and they simplify when one of the state is actually the ground state with the whole particle in one string. It's still complicated, but it simplifies, and that's why we are able to do the calculation. So that's why we got this tail. Okay, so now in 4 more minutes, let me briefly sketch the second calculation, which is directly in this limit. And use the fact that the large time limit of KPZ height for general initial condition can be formulated as a variational problem using every process. So as I showed at the beginning, the exponential of height at time t is a sum of a path. So you can rewrite it like this, which means that if you want the height at point x at time t, you look at all the paths which go from x to this axis, and you weight this path with exponential of the height at the initial condition. Okay, so there is this weighting factor, and that gives you the height at times t. Okay, now from what I showed you at the beginning, this is a droplet partition sum. So it can be written in terms of every process like this. And if you choose the initial condition like this, you obtain that the height at some position 0 is actually the max because it's exponential of t1/3 times something for large t, so it becomes a maximization problem. So it's a variational problem which involves the Airy process and a rescaled initial condition. So if you give me an initial condition, h of x and 0, this function, I rescale it like this with time. I call this h0 of y hat. If this goes to a limit, then it will give me some result for the distribution of height. So, for instance, if I start from an interface which is almost flat with some wiggles, this wiggle will disappear when I take this scaling, and it will go to flat initial condition. The droplet initial condition corresponds to this, so any wedge actually goes to this limit, and stationary to Brownian initial condition. Okay, so again, how much more time? 2, 3, 4 minutes? 4 minutes, 3 minutes, okay. So using this, I can actually address the two-time problem. Two-time problems mean that I have a short path from 0 to 0 in time t1 and a long path from 0 to 0 in time t2. The short path, I know exactly I can relate to Airy process because, as I told you, this is just Airy process at 0. The long path, I can split it in two parts. It goes from 0 to y, and y can be anywhere on this axis, and from y to 0. This part is the same Airy process because this is the same random noise here. So it's this part. And then there is a second part, which is this part, which is another Airy process, rescaled because the time difference here can be different from T1. So there is a delta factor. So it's a sum, it's a maximization over the sum of two uncorrelated Airy process. And the beautiful thing is that when delta goes to infinity, you see that this Airy process here is only evaluated near 0. And it's known that the Airy process near 0 has a statistics of Brownian motion. So you can rewrite it as Airy2 tilde of 0 plus a Brownian which is independent of this. The physics of this is that if T2 goes to infinity, essentially what you see here is a stationary distribution, which is Brownian motion. So, just to make long story short, the height at T1 is Airy process, a first Airy process, and the height at T2 is another Airy process completely uncorrelated, plus a finite piece, which is the max over the same Airy process, plus a Brownian. Okay, so it means that if you know the joint distribution of this Airy process and this maximization here, so this probability, then you can calculate the correlation at infinite times. Okay, I'm not going to explain anything, but I just give that there is this formula which I derived in this second paper for this joint distribution, and this formula allows me to calculate this ratio, and in principle one can get much better precision. I'm not expert in numerics, but I get this value, which if you remember is not very far from the experiments. Experiments was around a little bit above 0.6, and in fact, recently and independently, Timothy Alpinilli did numerics on directed polymer and found this result. He didn't know about my prediction, so we can say it's an independent calculation, numerical simulation. Okay, so I don't have time to go into detail, but from this you can calculate conditional mean. You can make contact with the previous work with Denardis and show that our assumption was correct. This can be tested now in experiments. I don't have time to explain this. So just to say what it is, I mean it's again the condition. It's a again the conditional, sorry, it's again the covariance ratio, but now conditioned to the value of H1 at the earlier time to be larger than something. So it's a complete function, it's not just a number now, and can be calculated. And we have not yet done so this was a comparison with the prediction of the theory of with Denardis, but we haven't done yet so as a function of delta. We have not done yet the comparison for infinite delta. Okay, I'm not going to explain this, and just to conclude, we use the replica Bethe-Ansatz to calculate one-time observable for KPZ equation. We have a partial solution of the two-time problem in two different limits. They agree quite well with experiments. And this shows that there is a memory effect for growth. And we believe that it should be actually always, when you have growth in an expanding geometry, which is this curved initial condition, there should always be this kind of memory effect. If you start with flat initial condition, you don't have the memory effect. This was also can be shown easily. It's really a property of expanding geometry. Okay, and of course what remains is what is the mathematics behind the two-time, the many-time, many-point correlations. It's really a fascinating question. And of course, we could use this method to get other observables in the problem. And I think I will stop here.
Two-time height distribution. So, is there any connection with like a random matrix in the sense that you said that?
Well, we don't know at all yet. There is nobody knows.
Like in terms of this Dyson's, Brownian motions, and if I just look.
That's a totally open question. I mean, maybe it could be reformulated as Dyson in some way. I mean, that could be very interesting. We don't know. I mean, people don't know. I mean, two-time is really very open. I mean, there are two big open questions in KPZ. A multi-time, and what's called the Airy sheet. So Airy process is telling you, if you take one point, initial condition, droplet initial condition starting from here, and you look at h at times x, so let me call y just to be y0. Okay, so these are all the paths going from here to here. Okay, so this is given by the Airy process. So h, as you vary x, it's a process, and it's the Airy process. But now suppose you want to ask, this. What is the joint distribution of this? Okay, so when you vary both x and y. This is called the Airy sheet. So it has a fancy notation like this. And that would require not just the replica Bethe-Ansatz with bosons, but the nested replica Bethe-Ansatz. It requires all the states, all the eigenstates, symmetric, non-symmetric, and this is completely open also. So these are the big two open questions in the field, in my opinion.
Two height at the same time distribution will be given by.
So it's a process as a function of x and a process at the same time as a function of y. Process in two variables. So for instance, it could be also two different initial conditions in the same noise. Okay, for KPZ it doesn't make too much sense, but for directed polymer, of course, it's well defined. I mean, it makes sense, but I'm saying it's not easy to measure two different initial conditions with the same noise for a growth problem.
And then if I ask what is the distribution, joint distribution of two?
Yes. So you have two different initial conditions, and you ask what are at time 0 and at time t, what are these two, what are the heights at time t, and what is the joint distribution. So this is in this Airy sheet problem. It's not known.
But if the initial condition is same, is it known? Like if I ask like what is the height at x1 and x2?
Yeah. This is known. This is the Airy process. You can write it as the joint CDF as a determinant, Freedom determinant with 2 by 2 matrix. Well, I think I don't know if it's proved, but I think it's reasonable to, I mean, that's what we find, that it goes to it goes to what I showed you, which is a product of a distribution, of a GUE distribution with a bike range distribution. But I don't think it's been proved, actually.
Doing like simulations of KPZ kind of difficult. Like, are the experiments actually faster than doing simulations, or?
Well, you know, experiments are experiments. You're talking about the statistics? Statistics is really good in this experiment, but still, I think simulation, you can get better statistics. Yeah, I think Calpinilli was able to get more precision and larger times. Yeah, simulation are still better. Without being bad to experimentalists, we can say that. Thank you.